Hello and welcome to this video where we're going to lay out some images for a print using Photoshop. My name's Barry Beckham. I'm originally from the UK, but I now reside on the Sunshine Coast of Australia. I recently wanted to say a thank you to an aunt of mine in the UK who helped me through a difficult time. Having told her quite a bit about my life in Australia, I decided to say thank you by sending her a postcard, but a postcard with a difference. It was to be prepared using Photoshop, which is just the best for this sort of thing. I wanted to include local scenes to where I live, so my aunt could see the places I had told her about. But I wanted to do it in the style of a seaside postcard. I also decided to have the postcard printed on metal, something a little different. Photoshop really makes the creation of this sort of presentation a breeze. What I normally do is to lay out what I want like a template, usually minus the images to start with. I use shapes to represent and position the images, and then I use layers and clipping to drop the images I want to use into place. This way I always have a template that I could use again, or in some cases I can adjust the template for a slightly different idea. Now these things often sound more complicated than they really are. So let's make a start by creating a new blank canvas at the size we want the print to be. We can do that from the top left of the Photoshop screen, File, New. I'm going to go over to the right hand side, select inches just for the moment, and I'll overtype that value with 16 and the height 12. The colour white is going to be pretty good, and as we can see in the resolution here, we have 300 pixels per inch. A good starting point. Let's create that. Now we need to go to the View menu at the top left of the screen because I'd like to bring into play my rulers, and from the rulers I can use guides. Rulers has a very easy to remember shortcut, Ctrl+R, which will toggle the rulers on screen and off. Now you can see the rulers on the left hand side and above. We can right click within the rulers and set them for inches, pixels, centimeters. Well, you can see the options. What I need to do here though is just put a guide in the center of the screen vertically and horizontally. To do that, if we just click into the left ruler and drag, when we get to the center, if we just slow down, it'll snap in place. If I do the same at the top, now we've got the exact center of the screen. As always, we need to save our work regularly as a Photoshop file. Because of the postcard style of the artwork I wanted to produce, I wanted a thin gap in white around the outer edge. Now that can be quite difficult to achieve because even if I go into the rulers, right click and choose, let's say, inches, I want about 1/4 inch between the left edge and the image and the top, bottom and right. Well, as you can see, it's quite difficult to determine where that is as we will be dragging out a guide. So I've got a little workaround which I've been using for quite some time, which works very well for me. Let me just close down my example and we're back to our artwork. What I'm going to suggest is this. Let's go to File, New. And what I'm going to do is to create a new blank document, just 0.25 inches in width and height. We do need to make sure we've got the same resolution. And here I've gone from white to black, simply so we can see the little square. It doesn't really matter what colour it is. Let's create that. Now once I've got it created, if I go to my tab at the top left of the screen and drag it out, I just want to use the move tool and click drag and drop. I can then close this down because we don't need it anymore. If you look over on the right hand side, you can see your little tiny square now located on its own layer. If I pick that up, it'll snap into the corner. Once it's there, if I go to my rulers and click and drag, the guide will snap to that point. From the top, it'll snap to the bottom of the square. Quick and easy to create that 1/4 of an inch gap. Then simply move this down to the bottom right corner, and we do the same there. Over to the left, click and drag, and it'll snap up to the top, and we've got now the outer edge laid out. But if we start to think about our artwork, in the center here, we only want about 1/8 of an inch because we want 1/8 of an inch either side to make our 1/4 of an inch. So let's make use of that little square once again and drop it right in the middle of our artwork, and it snaps into place, so it's very easy to do. So now we've got that positioned, if I go to my rulers on the left, click and drag, there I've got that snapped into the right position, and I may as well use that center guide because we don't need it in the center anymore. As you see, if I move my cursor over it, it gets the 2 little link lines. I can click and drag. Now I've got that nicely in place, and I can do exactly the same with the horizontal. We don't actually need that little black square anymore, so I could just highlight that layer and hit the delete key. But what I have got now is my artwork all ready and laid out, and we've managed to do it in only a minute or 2. The next stages are equally easy. What we need to do is to go over to the left hand side to our toolbox, and I'm going to select this option, the rectangular marquee tool, because if I move my cursor to the top left of those guides, click and drag, the selection itself snaps to the guides that we created. Now if we create a new blank layer, we can do that from the bottom right of the layers palette. Once I've created that, all I've got to do is to flood that shape with colour. Black is my foreground colour in the colour picker at the bottom of the toolbox, so Alt Backspace, there we have it done. Control D will remove the selection. All we need to do now is to select the top right, bottom left, bottom right, and produce exactly the same thing on separate layers. Now it doesn't matter if you create the blank layer first. Even though we've got that blank layer selected, if we still have the rectangular marquee tool selected, you'll notice when you click and drag, it'll still snap nicely to those guides. Once again, Alt Backspace, Control D, and I can do that for all 4. I'll keep recording as I do this because it's such a quick job. And finally, the last one. One more blank layer, Alt Backspace. And this is another good time to save our growing artwork. Now, because each of our shapes is held on a separate layer, we can use those shapes as a placeholder for any images we wish to use in our final artwork. This gives us quite a bit of flexibility to quickly try different images into our postcard, because the choice of images and where they sit within the 4 shapes is quite important. It's not uncommon to find at some stage that one of the images we've chosen just doesn't work well with the other 3. Now, I had that issue when I was putting together my own artwork for the print. 4 bird images, for example, used in this sort of scenario would look very good if they all faced inwards. We probably wouldn't want a bird on the top right facing to the right. We'd want the bird facing to the left. So the choice of images is quite important. Now, as you can see here, I've got my 4 images in a folder ready to use, and to save a bit of time, what we could do is open these images directly from Bridge into Photoshop Layers and then just drag all 4 of them together into the artwork we've created. So I'm going to just select all 4 of those. I'm going to go up to my tools at the top left of the screen. I'm going to choose Photoshop and I'm going to choose Load Files into Photoshop Layers. Once those 4 images have all opened up into layers, I'm going to select all 4 with the Shift-Click method. I'm going to drag the tab out from the top of the screen, and from the layers I can click, drag and drop. I don't need to keep the layers I've just opened from Bridge, so I can close this down, and I don't need to save it. I'll just turn off each of these and we'll turn on each one at a time as we apply it to the shapes. The first thing we need to do is to position every image over the appropriate shape that it's going to occupy. So this one, or this image at the top here, is going to occupy the top left shape. So I need to drag that down so it sits just above. Now all I need to do is to clip the image to the shape. If I hold the Alt key and I move my cursor between the 2 layers, you can see a little arrow and a square appears, and as I click, the image is wrapped into that shape. But all of the image is still there, so we can now resize it and position it wherever we want it. Before we actually start that process, here's another tip. Why don't we turn this particular image into a smart object? Just in case we make the image small and then we want to make it bigger later. If we make it a smart object, all of the image quality we have within the image is always retained. Now we can do that from the Layers menu. Just select each of these layers we're going to use in turn. We'll go up to the Layers and we're looking for Smart Objects, Convert to Smart Object. You can see I've put a little keystroke to do this for me pretty quickly because I do it quite often. Now, as you can see here by the quick change of the screen, I've gone ahead and done the same thing for the other 3 layers because it's identical. Let's start back at the image at the top left. If I select that image, what I want to do now is to pick up my free transform tool. You'll find that in the edit menu at the top left of the screen. A very quick and easy shortcut is Ctrl T. Now when we apply that to this particular image, sometimes the toggles are off screen. So here's a little tip. Hit Ctrl 0. Ctrl 0 will always fit your image on screen, but if the image has a bounding box, as we can see here, it'll fit that too. So all I've got to do now is to pick up the corner toggle, and I can make adjustments to this image to fit my growing artwork. Now, as you can see, I had to make a little compromise here. I had to choose which part of the image I wanted to show. I can hold the Shift key and I can distort the image a little bit. And with seascapes like this, we can get away with that. But if we was dealing with people pictures, then perhaps we wouldn't. All I have to do now is exactly the same with the other 3 images. Now at this stage too, if you wanted to remove the guides, you can do that via the View menu. There it is, Clear Guides. And we could hit Ctrl R to remove those rulers around the outer edge. Remember, if you're going to do that, save your image under a different name in case you want to go back to the version that displays those guides. So once again, I've speeded up the process by making the adjustments to the other 3 images, and one of the things I tried to do here was to line up the horizons between the left and right images. What I also did was to add a little bit of embellishment, a tiny amount of drop shadow and a thin black line around each image, and of course a little bit of text on the bottom right corner. Let's just quickly set up that effect around the edge by going down to the first of the images we started with, the black square at the top left. I'm going to select that layer. I'm going to go down to my effects down at the bottom there. I'm going to bring up the blending options. What I'm going to do here is tick the drop shadow and highlight it. I highlight it here so I can make any changes. I want my shadow to come out bottom and right, and you can just see a faint shadow there. Because of the resolution I'm using, I could increase these values. Sometimes I just overtype the values rather than using the sliders, but that's a personal choice. And on top of that, I tick the box to add a stroke line around the edge, and once again, select this section so that we can make changes to that. Here I think I'll put about 5 pixels. You can see I've got a nice crisp 5 pixel line around the outer edge on the inside. Then to transfer that to all of the other images, we hold the Alt key and we simply click and drag it to each of those shapes. All we need to do now is to add a little bit of text, and to be honest, I think that's the easy part. At this stage, I saved what I had as a Photoshop file to retain the work I've done so far, but then I also saved a JPEG at a compression level 12 ready to send to the printers. When we save an image as a JPEG, it will automatically flatten all of those layers together. If you're located in Australia, I can recommend Print to Metal, and I'll include their website address below. I've had 3 prints done by Print to Metal, and the quality and packaging is superb. If you're in the United Kingdom, I can recommend Loxley Colour Labs, who printed my postcard and included a message that I wanted written on the back of the print. I'll include a link to Loxley below as well. I've used Loxley for many years, and to be honest, I cannot fault them. Thanks for watching, and if you come along to my website, you can download this video, because you may find it a little more convenient to have it on your desktop. I'll also include this artwork too, because it's often quite useful when you're trying to learn to be able to open these files on your own computer. If you feel able to give me a thumbs up, I'd be grateful for that too. I'll see you next time.